Hey everyone, welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. Today I'm doing my first wrap-up in over a year. So I was really good with doing monthly wrap-ups, and then it got to August last year, and I read 34 books or 32 books last August because I read all 16 Cheetah Girls books and lots of other things around that as well, so it made it really high. So I sat down to film my August wrap-up 2020. I just couldn't do it, and then at that moment I was like, you know what, I'm never doing a wrap-up again. And here we are. Honestly, I'm so overdramatic. So overdramatic. I'm slowly getting over my fear of doing wrap-ups, and I thought maybe this month would be the perfect month to do one, because the last couple of months I've been terrible at reading. I mean, when I say terrible, I read 6 or 7 books in June and July, which is great, honestly. I could have read a lot less, I could have read nothing, But after reading so much every other month, and I was moving, and so much was going on, I didn't get a chance to actually read, or at least read as much as I wanted to. So I felt like a failure, and maybe I should have done a wrap-up for those months because there would have been a lot less to talk about. But in the month of August 2021, I read a total of 17 books, which is fab. I will say the first book I'm going to talk about, I read most of it in July, but I finished it in August, so I'm including it in this wrap-up, especially since I didn't do a July wrap-up, so I'm going to talk about it in this video instead. I do want to say as well, a lot of the books I read in August I ended up doing reading vlogs for, or I talked about them in a specific video, so I will link all of the videos that I did for these books in the description box below if you want to check out more of my thoughts. So I will get into it now because, why am I saying that? Why don't I just get into it? Okay, so the first book I finished in August was The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This was one of the books that I was so intimidated by. One, because I know the series isn't over. Two, it's a really big book. A lot of my friends love this book too, so I was really worried that I wouldn't. Fortunately, I ended up giving this book 4 stars, and I think when I did my live show for this with Aaron from Booked and Busy, I started to like it more because, I'm not the best at reading adult fantasy at the best of times, and getting different perspectives was really helpful in this because I think my problem with this book was that I wasn't sure a lot was going on, and because I couldn't really explain too much of the plot, I felt like, did I not read this right? But fortunately, that live show really helped, so I will link the live show down below if you want to check that out. I will also leave the reading vlog I did for this down below too. But essentially, this book follows Kavoth, and he is in hiding, and he ends up telling his story to this chronicler who he meets at this inn, and he's telling it over 3 days, I think, and this is the first day of him telling it. So we go back in time, we find out what happened to Kavoth when he was a child, and then when he goes on to university, and he trains to be the greatest magician of all time. And honestly, I don't really think that I could even tell you much of the plot besides that. We do have these strange murders that happen. We see Kavoth end up trying to investigate that. We also have a character called Denna, who he really likes, and yeah, it's very character driven, I will say that. This is a very character driven book. I feel like you'd have to like Kavoth at least a little bit for you to even enjoy this book, because we are in his head 24/7. You know what, I had a bit of a love-hate relationship with him. I really admired the fact that he came from poverty and a really hard life, and he was really making a name for himself. He was struggling so much, and he was overcoming so much, and he was trying so hard to achieve his goals. But also, he got really arrogant and really cocky, and I guess, if you know things and you are good at things, then absolutely be proud of that and show that. But he just came across as so arrogant sometimes. But I did like him for his struggles, and there was a moment I remember, and I mentioned this in the live show too, where I think Denna asks him, or at least says to him, he looks sorted, but he's like, no, I'm not actually sorted, if you knew what was in my head, I'm a mess, kind of thing. And that just hit me a bit, are you speaking to me? Are you me? So yeah, I tried after that to not judge him too harshly, and I kind of liked him a little bit more after that, when I could see, even though we are in his head, and we do see a lot of the chaos that's in his head, sometimes he's not the most reliable narrator, so his feelings are sometimes so clouded, and I'm very intrigued to see where that will head. I'm also intrigued to see if a plot happens in the second book as well. And again, I don't think a lot happened in this book. I think a lot of it was just at this university, he made an arch nemesis. Well, he's making enemies left, right, and center really because of his arrogance. But also, yeah, stand up for yourself against these bullies. Who do they think they are? But again, I can't wait to see if an actual story comes from this. There were hints of it, and there was hints of backstory and world building, and it's definitely one that is existing around the characters rather than the characters existing existing in the world, which I'm starting to like in adult fantasy, but again, like, I do struggle with them, so I'm struggling to give you cohesive thoughts on this book. But it was good. It was really good. Love the writing style. I think Patrick Rothfuss wrote this very fantastically. I was intrigued throughout. Looking back on it, not much of a plot, definitely more character heavy. I had more of an appreciation for it after the live show I did with Aaron. I think that's all I can pretty much say about it. The next 4 books I read were for a specific reading vlog, and that was reading for anticipated middle grade arcs, and they include The Weaker World's End by Emma Carroll, Shadowghast by Thomas Taylor, Dragon City by Katie and Kevin Tsang, In Danger of Dead Man's Past by MG Leonard and Sam Sedgman. So I will leave the reading vlog for that down in the description box, but I will go through my thoughts on each one and why I rated them and what they're about too. So the first one I read for that vlog was The Weaker World's End by Emma Carroll, and this one is set during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's a little bit of a historical middle grade, which Emma Carroll is known for, and we follow a character called Stevie who finds this mysterious girl hiding in her shed called Anna, and we don't know why she's there. She says she's run away from people who are trying to poison her, and we don't know the full scope of that because we don't know if we can trust Anna or not. And it made for a very exciting middle grade adventure story because this is set during the Cuban Missile Crisis, so we have some unsettled feelings from the characters. There's this backdrop of uncertainty, as well as meeting this new character who we are also uncertain of. I myself didn't really know what to think of Anna. There was things that she would do that I was a little bit suspicious of, but the fact that I couldn't really guess what was going to happen just made this book stand out like even more. I forgot to tell you, I did give this one 4 stars. It's beautifully written, characters are so well done. We also have Ray, who is Stevie's best friend. I really like their dynamic too because both of them are trying to figure out Anna's deal, and every now and then we will get glimpses of Anna being shady, so Anna would be like, don't ask questions, but she can ask them all the questions she wants. And there is a moment where Stevie finds her address in Anna's diary, but it was written before Anna even got to Stevie's, so I was like, was she targeted? Like, it was so interesting. So fantastic historical middle grade with a bit of mystery to it, and one that's like such a quick and easy read too. I think you could get through this in a few hours. Really good, 4 stars. And then I read Shadowghast by Thomas Taylor. This is the 3rd book in the Eirion Sea series, the 1st book being Malamander and the 2nd book being Gargantus, and I love the atmosphere in this world. Like, this has such a fantastic setting and some really interesting characters because we do follow Herbie Lemon. He's a lost and founder at a hotel, and there are different kind of fishermen folktale legends that are true, and we had different kind of creatures in the first 2. In Shadowghast, we have this mysterious magician come to Eirion Sea, and it's the eve of Ghastly Night, and Ghastly Night is like Halloween in Eirion Sea, so already the atmosphere is pitch perfect. Perfect for reading during October. Honestly, if you have not yet read the series or this book yet, please do it soon because so beautifully written. The atmosphere, oh god, it's just fantastic. But we also have some mysterious disappearances from some of the residents in Eirion Sea, because what the series also does so well is that it has background characters that feel like true characters. They're not just sort of background fodder. They actually have personalities and they impact the story every now and then too. So we do have some background characters starting to disappear. We have some incredible mysteries carried over from the first 2 books because we don't know what happened to Herbie Lemon's parents or Violet Palmer's parents, and there's just something so eerie that's happening. This book doesn't answer a lot. This is going to be a 5-book series, so this is only the middle book, so fair enough. Oh my gosh, like when you get to like certain parts of this, you're like, oh my god, I feel so close to the truth. I feel so close to the answers, but they just snatched away from you. And I'm just like, no, like give me the answers. So I need to be really patient because again, there's 2 more books to this series. I'm not frustrated. I probably was when I read it, but when you're in the moment, you just feel so connected to the characters and you feel so passionate for the characters to find out the truth about their stories and their history. And if the lighting changes, it's because I'm using natural light and the sun's going in and out of the clouds. So I'm sorry about that. But the story in general, we do have the Shadowghast, and it is like this shadowy figure that appears and it apparently steals other people's shadows. And that's like a legend, a story that's come with this mysterious magician who's also rolled in. And we don't know the story behind the magician. We don't know what her deal is. There's something she tells Herbie in the beginning that you're just a little bit like, well, that's game-changing. Are we going to explore that more? That's all I'll say about it because I don't want spoilers. But this was fantastic. I gave it 4 stars. I cannot wait for the next 2 books. There's just too many mysteries and questions that need answered, and I'm desperate to find them answered. I did do an interview with Thomas Taylor for this book very recently, so I will leave that interview link down below. It was spoiler-free, so you don't have to have read this to follow along with the interview. It was just a really fun time. And then in the same vlog, I read Dragon City by Katie and Kevin Tsang. This is the 3rd book in the Dragon Realm series. series, and this one is so far my favourite. So we had Dragon Mountain, Dragon Legend, and now Dragon City. And there was this kind of recurring storyline that was going on throughout the first 3 books. They have, well, the first 2 books had huge cliffhangers, and this one, it doesn't exactly have a big cliffhanger, but it does have a different direction that we're going in with the series. So every single book has made me more intrigued for the next. So I'm really excited about the 4th book. But in this one, the way that book 2 ended, like, I needed to know what happened next. Unfortunately, we're thrust straight into the action in this book. I should also tell you what the series is about if you haven't read it before. But Dragon Mountain, the first book in the series, followed 4 kids who go to this camp in the middle of China, and they end up coming across Dragon Mountain where 4 legendary dragons have been hidden for so long, and they end up bonding with these dragons, which gives them these incredible powers. There's also this dragon of death that is threatening terror in the world, so they have to try and stop the dragon of death. But again, each book has been so different and vast from the last one. I can't even tell you the plot of this one without spoiling the big twist in book 2. I will say this book like really had me so close to tears, like my mouth was so heavy. There are some fantastic character moments, some really touching character moments too, and things just come to a head in this book. There are so many things that are wrapped up, which makes it like a perfect kind of trilogy with the potential of moving forward, which it will be doing. And I just love the story. Like, the story was non-stop. It was fast-paced. We are in this very dangerous setting, and it does never let up. Wait, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't ever let up. Definitely one of the most exciting books that I've read, which is kind of why I gave 5 stars. There's some bits that I thought, oh my gosh, this is like too much for children, surely. But I loved it. It is fantastic. So I gave it 5 stars. It's the first 5 stars in the series for me, so I'm hoping the next book continues this trend and we just continue getting the 5 stars. Yes, I do feel like this series has laid its foundation now so that I'm invested and I want to see more of these characters every single time. So that's why I think that this book did really well, and yeah, can't wait for more. And then finally for that vlog, I read Danger at Dead Man's Past by M.G. Leonard and Sam Sedgman, and this book literally just came today. It got sent to me from the publisher and it just arrived this morning, so this is perfect. This is the 4th book in the Adventures on Trains series, which follows Hal and his uncle Nat, who literally go on trains and solve mysteries and crimes that happen aboard. This book is the first one where they actually go toward a crime and toward a mystery in order to solve it, whereas in the first 3, they just happen to be on the train at the wrong time, or the right time if you look at it differently. But each book has been set in a different international setting. So in book 1 we had England and Scotland, in book 2 we had America, in book 3 we had South Africa, and in this one we have both Paris and Germany. And I gave this one 5 stars too. I just love how adventurous this series is and how it can take you and transport you to so many different places. It's also like fantastically written. I can never really solve the mysteries that happen in these books. Like, you can follow the clues and solve it, but I just never do. I just get a bit too lost in the story and the characters that I end up missing the clues, and I never seem to get it right. But I really enjoyed this one because this time we have this kind of family curse that's happening in this family in Germany, and Hal and Uncle Nat end up going over to try and solve what's going on. We have way more character development for like Uncle Nat, for instance, and even Hal, we see more emotional depth from him than we have in the previous 3 books. Each single book these characters are coming more and more alive, and it's becoming like such a comfort series for me. I just love being able to get on these trains with these characters and solving these mysteries. It's such a strange concept, I know. This one probably is set less on trains than the first 3, which is fine with me because it allowed for more like gothic atmosphere in this, because we do have some gothic set pieces that are illustrated so beautifully by Eliza Paganelli, who illustrates this book or the series in general, and you just see so much and it's just so great. The illustrations, the writing, they come together so beautifully. I just love the series so much. I cannot stop raving about it. So underrated, and the series has gotten better and better. Gave the first 2 books 4 stars, and then book 3 5 stars, and then this one 5 stars too. So I hope you guys love it as well, because I know I did, and it definitely has my favourite cover of all of them so far. Yeah, I just loved it. So the next 2 books I read for my Books I Lost To during Play Your TBR Ride episode 3, and they were Ace of Spades by Faridah Àbíké-Íyímídé and Conjuring Applied by B.A. Schwab. So firstly, talking about Ace of Spades then, 5 stars. I literally think this is probably my favourite book so far this year, because when I look at my co-pal ratings, the 5-star books, like the true 5-star books, have mainly been rereads, and this is probably one of the first ones that I read this year where it was my first time reading it and gave it a genuine 5 star. This was incredible, amazing, Loved it. So this one follows Devon and Chiamaka, and they are both like the only two black students in this all-white private school. And there's something mysterious going on because it seems like Devon and Chiamaka are targeted by this mysterious person who is leaking information about them. This anonymous texter is called Aces. I've read and watched all of Pretty Little Liars. I've watched Gossip Girl. I've seen it all. And still, this book just came out of nowhere and blew all of my expectations and theories out of the water, and I didn't see it coming. And when I say this is like one of the best twists I've ever read, like honestly it is. It honestly is. And what's so terrifying as well is that I believe that it could actually happen. It could actually be true. Devon and Chiamaka are two amazing characters, honestly. You think you know them in the beginning and you think you see them in a certain way, especially Chiamaka. I think she has like this huge kind of change, like this character arc in this book where you think a certain way of her to begin with because she's kind of trying to be popular. She's trying to fit in a lot more than Devon is. But in the end, you see more of her reasoning behind it. You see more of her as a character. And there's just like so much that you can see in yourself in these characters, because amongst all of this stuff that's happening to them, they still, you know, fight. Things just keep happening and you see their determination. You see like how hopeless a lot of this is. Like Pretty Little Liars, that was easy, you know, easy A. But this, honestly, it is a struggle and you really feel like lost with them. You don't know how they're going to get out of it and what they can possibly do to change what's happening to them. But alas, they persevere. I'm not going to spoil anything, like seriously, I'm not. But the way this unfolds, again, is just so terrifying and surprising. But because there's just so much tension running throughout this, the payoff is extraordinary. Oh god, it's just so exciting. Like I just remember getting to that point and just being like, there was a part of me that was starting to think it, but then I was like, no. But it wasn't until it was like spelled out on the page that actually was true. I was like, no way. So yes, fantastic. I do talk more about this in my vlog, which I will link down below as well. But yeah, I just really enjoyed this. Like this was so great and I love my time reading this, and I thought I was growing out of young adult, but this is kind of like pulling me back in that direction, and I'm like, maybe I should try more. I mean, there's more young adult coming up in this video actually that puts me off young adult, but it's fine. This one was definitely one of the best young adult books I've read in quite a while. So yes, 5 stars, true 5 stars, highest 5 stars possible. Loved it so much. And then in the same vlog, it was A Conjuring of Light by Schwab, and I was excited to read this 2 years ago. I started this in October 2019, never got a chance to finish it. Honestly, like, I just didn't care anymore. This is probably my fault. I should probably read the entire series again from the beginning. Darker Shade of Magic, I mean, which follows Kel, who can go through different Londons, and each London is different. There's magic. He meets Lila. There's things that happens. Like, trying to explain this series now, after having not read it for so long, and then coming into this book, I did read synopsis of the first two to refresh my memory, and then I went into this book, but I think I just didn't care anymore. Like, I didn't find it that exciting. I couldn't really relate to the characters anymore. I didn't find them as exciting as I did the first time around I read them. I just didn't really follow along, which again, probably why I won't talk about it too much in this video, because I feel like this is the main problem and something I should have done 2 years ago. I didn't really care all that much for it. I think I gave it 3 stars because I still think it was written pretty well. It was short chapters, which I love, and it just made me keep reading, and I was like, okay, I'm at least a little bit intrigued, but I just wasn't intrigued enough to really love it or fall in love with it. I do think I gave the first 2 books like 4 stars, maybe? Yeah, I just didn't care at this point, and unfortunately, this book paid the price for it. I am so sorry. I am so sorry, but I was just like, let's just knock this off my TBR and get it out of the way so that at least I've read the series. So 3 stars. So the next book is actually 4 books in one, and that's the Fiestry books by R.L. Stine. This one has the first 4, which is The New Girl, The Surprise Party, The Overnight, and Missing. And I did a reading vlog again for this one as well, but I also watched the movies that are on Netflix, and I kind of did a sort of reading the books and watching the movies kind of vlog. So if you want to check that out, do go ahead. It does have some spoilers for the books in though, not the movies, but it does have spoilers for the books, so bear that in mind when you go into it. These are quite old, these are very dated, and you can tell, and I did not like this collection. I liked some stories better than other ones. Okay, I gave 3 of them 3 stars and 1 of them 2 stars, but like they're so low, really low 3 stars. There's just so many frustrating things in this series. I love R.L. Stine from reading all the Goosebumps books when I was a kid, or at least most of them, but I know R.L. Stine's formulaic writing style, and it in this series, like, honestly, characters just frustrated me. And I do have to try not be as bad on them because, again, it's written quite a while ago, but also they're teens in this. But their actions just frustrated the hell out of me. They conflicted themselves so much. I do talk specific examples in my reading vlog. Sorry, I don't think I can really pick out all of the examples in this video. Honestly, I do have an argument here and it's just not in this video, I'm sorry. But yeah, actually, I will give you one example. So in the surprise party, the main character, she is throwing the surprise party for a girl who's been away for a year because her boyfriend died, and her friend hates surprise parties. So the main character decides to throw her friend a surprise party. Yay, because that's exactly what she wants, right? But then when she's getting threatened and there are death threats and everything like that, she still wants to go ahead with it because she's proud, but then she's also like, oh, I'm scared, I don't want to do it. And then she gets frustrated when people tell her not to do it. Just frustrating characters. I don't think I liked a single character in this collection, honestly. I do like the vibe. Like, I think the atmosphere is still pretty good. You do get some scary stuff that's happening in Shadyside, but again, like, not enough for me to really like it. I definitely like the movies better, and I was given some recommendations for other R.L. Stine books in the Fear Street series to read instead of these ones. These were the only ones that were available to me at the time, so I read these and watched the movies, and they're two totally different things, but I still did it, and I don't regret it, but I just really didn't like this collection. So if I was to give this whole collection a rating overall, it would be 2 stars, but I think the one that really stood out for me was the Overnight. It gave me I Know What You Did Last Summer vibes, and there were some genuinely kind of scary parts in this, whereas in other ones there were like fake scary parts. And I hate kind of bamboozling of the reader. I do know that it's to draw out tension, but when it's constant fakery one after the other, it just frustrates me to no end. But the Overnight, it was a lot scarier. There were some good moments in Missing as well, like the 4th book in this collection, when the two main characters, their parents go missing and they have to find them. But that one was just too repetitive, it kept going in circles, and by the end of it I just got bored. And then when we finally got the climax, it happened too quickly, and it happened too late. I just feel like these books were just all over the place, just like my review of them. Okay, and then we get to Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. I hated this. I read this one for my From Book to Disney adaptation video series, and I read this for the Silver Age because Peter Pan was a movie released by Disney based on this book. So that's what I've been doing. I've been doing a series where I read the original source materials of the Disney films and see how well Disney adapts them. So if you want to check that out, I do have a huge rant about this book in that video. But briefly, in this one, we do follow Peter, who comes across the darling children, Wendy, Michael, and John, and he takes them to Neverland, where children don't grow up. Honestly, I just hated it. I liked the beginning more before we even got to Neverland. I just hated Peter Pan and Tinkerbell so much. Tinkerbell actually wants to kill Wendy. Not even just like in a jokey kind of way because she's jealous and petty, but she actually wants to kill her. And she tries to get the Lost Boys to kill her. We do see that in the movie a little bit, but it's not as extreme as in the book. We also have some very inappropriate things in this book that happens that I just think is not right for children. Not just, you know, from Tinkerbell and Tinkerbell's potty mouth, and also the mention of fairy orgies, but also the racism and the awful stereotypes that are in this book. I was reading, I think it was chapter 10, just with like a grimace all the way through. I was like, it repulsed me, and I just couldn't get on board with any of it because I just hated Peter so much. He is the epitome of white supremacy, of colonialism, and the way he just swoops in and everyone just worships him and bows down to him, it just made me feel a bit sick. And then when you hear about J.M. Barrie's past and how this book came about and like the inspirations for it, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist and I don't want to put ideas in other people's heads and anything. Like, do your own research if you want to. But when I read a lot of the stuff that happened, and I didn't know any of this as well before going into this, like it wasn't until I think I was doing my Disney watch along with my patrons that, you know, it was mentioned, and I looked into it and I was like, oh my god, this actually makes me feel sick. This is just a really shocking book. So I think in co-pile it comes out at 2 stars, but I'm giving this book 1 star. Didn't like it. It wasn't magical to me. It's so much girl on girl hate, so much racism, so many horrible stereotypes, so inappropriate for kids. Let's just get rid of the classics and read books that are actually good, that have been released recently, because there are a lot of them. Put this one down now. But if you do want to see me rant a bit more about it with specific examples, I do have my From Book to Disney adaptation video series linked down below. And then I read Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, and this is the first book in the Frostheart trilogy, which is part of the big Elderling, I was going to say Elderling along, big part of the Elderling kind of series world thing, and I really enjoyed this. It wasn't a favourite of mine, but I did give this one 4 stars, and a lot of people love Robin Hobb's books, so I thought, let's do this, let's give this a try. Robin Hobb's writing is fantastic, and I really enjoy the character it fits. So kind of similarly with The Name of the Wind, I probably couldn't tell you much of the plot, but character-wise, it's definitely very character-driven, but I definitely preferred Fitz over Kavoth in The Name of the Wind. Fitz was a lot more down-to-earth, he was a lot more accessible and relatable. I was really interested by the fact that he was like this royal bastard, and people were looking down on him, but then he is like forced to train as an assassin, and he doesn't want to be an assassin. So I really like that struggle of him doing what he's being told to do, and his internal struggle of like, he doesn't want to do it. So Fitz is like tasked to assassinate people, he doesn't want to do it, and I guess that's pretty much like the plot, like the base plot of this. In terms of like world building, it's not a lot, but it's enough because we see it through the characters, just like Name of the Wind. Like, I'm seeing so many similarities between them, except I preferred this one. It was definitely a slow book, like the pacing wasn't fast or anything, and some of the chapters were a little bit tough to get through, like for me personally, just because I'm not a big epic adult fantasy reader, but because I knew how much people love the series, and because I was genuinely starting to really like Fitz and other characters, that I was like, okay, I'm just going to continue reading, I'll continue reading, and I'm glad I did, because by the end of it I was like, okay, like I do feel more invested in the characters, not so much the world, but I'm definitely invested in the characters. I feel like the last 100 pages definitely picked up the pace a bit, which was great because that does make me want to read the next book even more. And I don't think it's like a negative or anything to say that it was a lot more slow going. I feel like this was a pretty foundational book. It's the first book in the series, so obviously like we have to be eased into this world, which is great for me as a reader of mostly middle grade. So I think it's like a fantastic way for like people like me to start into the adult fantasies, but only if you don't care that there isn't a whole load of plot. But I do see the basis of plot, and I see where it's going, and I see like how intriguing it can be. So I'm going to stick with it. I do think there's going to be a lot more to love in the series, and also a lot more to cry about. I see so many people crying over Robin Hobb books, and I want to be one of those people. I also like the magic system. There's like a bit more subtlety to it, but it's kind of woven into the world and the characters that it feels so natural, and it makes it feel like very real because it's like a lot more natural and things. That's what it kind of feels like to me, and it made it so much more engrossing. I was rooting for Fitz. I was rooting for Fitz to be able to master it and to learn, and we had the master who is like this awful character, and I hated him so much, but because he was balanced with Fitz and how much I loved Fitz and was rooting for Fitz, it made for such an interesting read. Again, not the most exciting, but such an interesting read that kept me through to the very end. Definitely one of the best books I've read in terms of character development, so yeah, I can't wait to read the rest of the series. 4 stars, yes, 4 stars. So the next book was a reread, and that was Frostheart by Jamie Littler. Reading this one because I'm hosting Frostheart along, where we are reading Frostheart in August, Frostheart 2 in September, and Frostheart 3 in October. So I don't want to talk too much about this one because this is like the 3rd time I've reread it, and of course it's 5 stars. It's one of my favourite middle grade books of all time. Reading it again, honestly, it was so magical. I listened to the audiobook while reading it physically so I could see the illustrations, the fantastic narration. It was just a perfect package, honestly. But if you do not know what this book is about, we follow Ash, who is born into the Faridah stronghold. He doesn't know his parents, but they did leave him a lullaby so that when he's older he will be able to find them by deciphering this lullaby and finding more parts of it. Ash also has these incredible powers that he has been hiding because it is a forbidden power. He is able to communicate with Leviathans, and Leviathans are these monsters that live in the Snow Sea, because this is also a dystopian world, which I'm kind of butchering this summary, but there's just so much about this world that I just want to continue on. But anyway, Ash accidentally unleashes his powers and he is kicked out of the Faridah stronghold and he joins the Frostheart crew. There's a lot going on in this series, and I always change the summary every time I mention it. I can never get it perfect. because I just want to keep saying different things every time I mention the summary. Again, love this book, it's one of my favourites. Ash is a fantastic character. Like Fitz in Assassin's Apprentice, I really root for Ash. I find him such a relatable character. I love Luna as well, his best friend, as well as Tobu, his Yeti guardian. And Tobu and Ash have this incredible relationship that they butt heads a lot, but there's love like deep down as well, like a parental love. And I love saying that in middle grade. The adventure in this is so incredible. I love the illustrations. The audiobook was fantastic. Oh, I just love this book so much. Cannot possibly say anything new about this book at this point. So I will move on from this one relatively quickly. But again, if you have not yet read this book, oh my god, please do so. It's one of my favourites. Okay, so actually I read this earlier in the month, but I forgot to mention it because I don't own it physically. And that is The Martian by Weir. I read this one with my patrons. We do a monthly book club. And if you want to join us, I do have my Patreon down in the description box. We have this exclusive book club where my patrons play OTVR right live every month, and we choose a book club book out of that. Do join us, it's so much fun. But The Martian was picked for our August pick, and I listened to the audiobook for it. So very briefly then, The Martian follows Mark, who is stranded on Mars in 2035, and it's kind of like his struggle with surviving on Mars by himself. And we have this story that's told mostly in like diary format, and we get like all his like video logs, and it's a very interesting piece. Like I wasn't sure I was going to vibe with it to begin with, because I'm not the biggest fan of things like epistolary novels or, you know, things that are told in a different format. I don't know why, I just not the biggest fan. But this book did help me to understand the gravitas of the situation, and I really felt the tension and the struggle that Mark was going through. And I really admired Mark as a character because he was just so incredibly smart. But like, if I was stranded on Mars, I just don't know if I would be able to continue the way that he did and use his skills the way he did to survive it. I just don't think I'm that smart. However, if I was trained as an astronaut, maybe I would have done. It was very exciting. Like, there were a lot of times that it was very exciting. I've never seen the movie, by the way. I've never seen the movie, so I don't have that to compare it to. But I did find the story very exciting. I didn't find the second part of it, like maybe the last part of it, all that exciting. And I did feel like I preferred like the first 3/4 of it than anything else. But it was still a really interesting read. I loved talking about it with my patrons. They had a lot of interesting things to say, probably more than I did. And I gave this book 4 stars. Maybe because I didn't fall absolutely head over heels in love with it, maybe it should be more of a 3. But I think because I think it was so strongly written and the character really stood out to me, it was great. I mean, other characters were not developed whatsoever. Like, it really was the Mark show in this. But it did make it a lot more of a character study on one character than anything else. Unfortunately, Mark was pretty funny. There were some funny moments in this that made me actually genuinely laugh out loud. But I don't know, maybe I would have preferred personally if it was in a different format, if it was like in third person or something. I don't know. It was good. I did listen to the audiobook and the audiobook was fantastic. And I almost forgot to mention it, so I'm sorry about that. Then I read The Shark Caller by Zillah Bethell, and this one was for Middle Grade Monthly, and I'm having the live show for that on the 12th of September, I believe, so I will leave a link to the live show down below. But this one is set on a small island where Bluewing lives, and Bluewing, she wants to be a shark caller, which is only for like the males of her family, which she sees as like a huge injustice, which, and rightly so. And then we have this American girl called Maple come along with her father, and Bluewing is forced to like spend time with her, and they do not get on to begin with. However, Maple is very adventurous and gets Bluewing out of her comfort zone, and things happen. I don't want to spoil it, but I think I'm giving this book 3 stars. I've been trying to settle on a rating for this one, but I think I'm going to give it 3 stars. I love the island setting of this, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't really taken with the story. The story didn't grasp me the way I wanted it to. I did love the exploration of character and how characters interacted, and the way that we had this really spoiled American girl coming to this island, and the way she would talk to Bluewing and talk about her island was like very disrespectful. But then she ends up kind of turning her opinion around the more time she spends with Bluewing. And then the same with Bluewing and Maple. Like, Bluewing changes her mind. Like, no spoilers or anything, but I feel like it's a given with it being a middle grade that there are morals to be learned, and they have like a change of heart. We learn more about the characters. Some of it is a little bit surprising, but I will say there was like a twist that happened, but I've read that twist quite a few times at this point, that at this point in time for me it's more of a overused storyline thing that I'm just not taken with anymore. If this was the first instance of me reading it, then maybe I would have been like really shocked. I wasn't the biggest fan of the way it turned out, and I can't wait to talk about this for Middle Grade Monthly because it's just so interesting, and I can't wait to see what people thought of that. A little bit doesn't make sense. It felt a little bit more unbelievable, but I did love the lessons learned. I loved the story and morals that it told. Yeah, it kind of ruined it a little bit. I did find myself getting a little bit bored through like in the middle of it, but again, like with the setting and the atmosphere of this, I thought it was really well done, and that kept me reading. It's a fast read anyway, so it's not too bad. Things about it just kind of ruined it for me, but it's still a great middle grade book, so don't let me put you off. I just feel like because I read this certain twist so many times before, it's now more of a cliche than anything else. Yeah, 3 stars. And then finally, I reread Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. Again, I read this one for my From Book to Disney adaptation, the Silver Age Part 1 video, and I will talk about it more in depth in that video. It's already done, I know I talk more in depth. You know what, with this being a reread, I wasn't the biggest fan of it the first time I read it last year, but I kind of liked it a little bit more after rereading it, but mainly because I hated Peter Pan so much, I thought nothing can get worse than that. So when I reread this, I was like, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought. It's still not perfect in my eyes. I still find a lot of it a little bit boring, even though it's nonsensical and magical and whatever, I still find a lot of it a little bit boring, and it just goes over my head. Like, some of the nonsense was just like, whatever. But I also didn't find Alice as whiny as I originally did last year, but she was still whiny. I still didn't like her that much, but I liked her a little bit more than the first time I read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I still didn't like the fact that she would offend a lot of people and be like, oh, why are you so easily offended? Like, just stop offending people then. And just how entitled she would end up becoming as well. Like, I see some similarity to Peter Pan, but obviously, like, Alice is nowhere near the level of Peter Pan. Interesting characters though, there are some iconic moments in this. Again, the Queen of Hearts is very iconic, and the Mad Hatter's iconic. We got a little bit more of an embellishment in the world and the reason why the Mad Hatter is stuck in tea time and stuff. Like, that was really interesting. Some good morals in this, at least, and some of it was entertaining. Some of it was genuinely funny as well, and the movie did a good job at taking those funny moments and even those character moments where a character would do something like the Queen with her off with their heads and the Cheshire Cat and the Mad Hatter. Their personalities are perfectly embodied in the movie. I literally read this in like 2 hours, maybe less than 2 hours. It was a really fast reread. I kind of liked it for that, but still not one of my favourite classics, but nothing can get as bad as Peter Pan in my eyes. I mean, probably, I don't know, I haven't read all the classics, children's classics anyway. So actually, Secret Garden and Peter Pan are 2 of my least favourite. However, Peter Pan is probably worse. I don't know, like, oh gosh, I don't know. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, not as bad as Peter Pan, so that is a win. 3 stars. So there we have it. Oh my gosh, like, that wasn't as painful as I thought it would be. My first wrap up in over a year. I'm so proud of myself. I do want to continue doing wrap-ups, however there will not be one for September because I am reading all the Goosebumps books in September, so I'm going to be doing a huge movie-length vlog on the Goosebumps books, and I'll be doing a video where I rank all the Goosebumps books from worst to best, so that'll essentially be my September wrap-up, I guess. There will definitely be one in October, November, December, and all of those. It's just because I'm reading so many Goosebumps books in September, there's not going to be one for September. However, welcome back to the wrap-ups. It's been great. It's actually not been too bad. Thank you so much for watching though. I really appreciate it. Please leave a like if you enjoyed and want to see more wrap-ups in the future. I would really appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. And I will hopefully see you in the next video. Bye.